Hello and welcome to the National Security Conversation. Today we will be discussing South Asia in general and India-Nepal relations in particular. Nepal may be a small country, but Nepal is one of India's closest friends in the South Asian neighborhood. India has also had a historical relationship with the Nepalese state and the Nepali people. However, in the recent past, the relationship between India and Nepal has been a bit testy. Nepal has been accusing India of interfering in its domestic affairs, and India has been concerned about the increasingly close relationship between Beijing and Kathmandu. It is important that we look at what is happening between India and Nepal in the broader context of the geopolitical developments in South Asia. And to do so, I have with me in the studio Professor Mahendra Lama. Mahendra Lama is a professor of South Asian Studies at the School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. He was earlier the Pro-Vice Chancellor of the Indira Gandhi National Open University and the founding Vice Chancellor of the Sikkim University. Professor Lama, welcome to the National Security Conversation. Before we get down to discussing Nepal, can you give us a broad overview of the various geopolitical developments in the South Asian region and where India is placed, India is located in this sort of very interesting geopolitical developments that are happening in the South Asian region?
Well, thank you very much. The last 2 decades, we have seen significant developments in South Asia, right? Because there have been traditional players in South Asia who have changed their positions, approaches, and there have been non-traditional players also. They have come in a big way. And many things are happening, particularly on the geopolitical areas, but I don't want to discuss anything about the military part of it because there have been adequate discussions on it. But on the social, economic, and political aspects of it, I would like to just mention that, the Chinese presence in South Asia is something very different from what it did in the last 30 to 40 years. You will find a very distinct design in Chinese approach to South Asia. It has started approaching South Asia in 3 different modes. In Sanskrit, we call it Trishul, the trident mode, right? The first, of course, is a very, very local integration. It is trying to integrate entire South Asian countries at a very, very local level. Say, for example, Wakhan Corridor in Afghanistan, then Kunjarab Pass in Pakistan, Nathula in India, right? Similarly with Tatopani in Nepal, such kind of things. And these local integrations are very well connected with much larger Chinese connectivity projects like the Belt and Road initiatives. Then the second, of course, is a very conscious national engagement with the national governments. For example, India. Our trade with China in 1990 was hardly millions, right? Today it is 70 plus billion, right? If you look even South Asia as a whole, our trade with Chinese trade with South Asian countries was hardly 2 to 3 billion in 2000. Today it is more than 101 billion, right? Similarly in non-US. So it is a national engagement. Third engagement is a very interesting engagement known as a regional investment. So this is a trident. And in the name of regional engagement, Chinese are now trying to bring in RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Program in South Asia, Belt and Road initiatives, right? And also, of course, what you call it, China trying to become a member of SAARC.
How concerned are you about this Chinese expansion? Do you see this as a natural expansion of a rising superpower, or do you, sitting in India, are you worried about the expansion of the Chinese power in the South Asian region, the way that you've sort of described just now?
It is not very worrisome, precisely because it is not South Asia centric, right? They have done it in Southeast Asia, they are doing it in in Europe, they are doing it in Africa, they are doing it in Central Asia, right? What is very surprising is how this kind of connectivities or this kind of newer varieties of exchanges will change the regional dynamics first and the bilateral dynamics. That is very going to be quite critical. Say, for example, I would say that how a country like Bangladesh is going to balance between India and China, and what would be India's role, or what would happen to India's traditional predominance in South Asia.
That's correct. So in this context, how do you assess the Nepal-India relations at this point of time? We've had a historical relationship with Nepal, but as I said, there has been some concern in the recent past.
There has been 2-3 significant developments in Nepal, right? And this is where India is trying to adjust, or India is not trying to adjust. The question comes. First, of course, is the political dynamics within Nepal. It has changed. It has really changed drastically, right? From monarchy to parliamentary democracy, now to you have a federalist structure there, right? Secondly, a new set of institutions have come up in Nepal, right? Based primarily handled by a number of international institutions and a kind of a new generations of the Nepalese elites, right? And third is Nepal has become more global, its orientation is more global than India-centric. So these are some of these significant changes, and of course you have absolutely different players, not exactly different players, but players in a different mode, like China.
You know, when I look at the Sino-Nepalese relationship, what concerns me is this. Unlike, say, for example, the relationship between Maldives and China or Sri Lanka and China, there seems to be a lot more groundswell in Nepal in favor of China. In fact, the Prime Minister of Nepal, K.P. Sharma Oli, during his campaign, he did talk about the importance of China. He did have a lot of bad things to say about India. He, in fact, went on to say that the 1950 agreement between Nepal and India should be revised, and that has been one of his major campaign rallying cries. So how do you sort of see the increasing or emerging partnership between, say, Nepal and China, as opposed to the way it has been with other countries and Nepal and other countries and China?
You see, in case of Nepal, if you see historically, Nepal's relations with China was a very geographically segmented relationship. It was basically concentrated in what you call Tibet, right? Now, but after King Mahendra dissolved the first democratically elected government in December 1959, December 1960, for the first time, King Mahendra did 4 significant things there, and that actually is the context, right? What Prime Minister Oli is doing is actually not the context. That is the 4 contexts he did was he brought China in a big way to Nepal, right? And did a large number of projects, including the Kathmandu-Kodari highway, then the Pokhara-Kathmandu highway, number of ring road projects and all, right? So that was the first time India and China were put in a competitive mode as far as aid is concerned. So
this is not the first.
No. All of 50s. You see, there 1-to-1 competition used to be there. India connected our plains land with Kathmandu, and the Chinese connected Kathmandu with their border, right? So you have, if India does one road, Chinese would do this. In fact, whole of 50s, whole of 60s, 70s and 80s also you'll find that. Then the second thing he did was, King Mahendra did was, took large number of hillmen, people in the hills, and made them settle down in the plains, precisely because he thought that in the plains basically there were people of Indian origin, right? Third, he made the Nepalese currency compulsory throughout Nepal for the first time. And fourthly, in order to really reduce the dependence on India, he started doing what you call the East-West highway, which is absolutely within Nepal. Otherwise, Nepalese coming from west, right? So that is the exact context. But few things happened in the last decade or so that brought Nepal much closer to China. First, of course, is, we have had 3 rounds of blockade.
That's correct.
Right? One was in 1971, the second one was in 87, 88, and one, of course, in 2015. And this time it was taken absolutely seriously by Nepal, precisely because today's Nepal is different from what it was in 80s or it was in
And today's China is different from what it was in
Absolutely.
the 80s or 70s.
And secondly, by this time, Nepalese had diversified their relations with they had multiple partners. If you take even multilateral institutions, right, or any bilateral country, so you have. And the third important thing is the Nepalese, the entire political structure had started changing. So this is the context.
How do you read KP Sharma Oli's argument about revising the 1950 treaty? Is that more rhetoric, or is that something that is pushed by the Nepalese in a very substantive manner today?
You see, it is not Mr. Oli only, right? Nepalese have been demanding the 1950 peace and friendship treaties should be revised since last 30 years almost, right? And there have been exchanges on this. But it became much more serious in the context of the fact that there have been significant, the Nepalese perceive that there has been some kind of a dominance of Indian political leaders, Indian media, Indian system, businessmen in Nepal. So, and they thought that this is because of the 1950 treaty, because 1950 treaty, Article 7 and 8 really allow any Nepalese to come and settle down in India, and any Indians to go and settle down. So it is in the spirit of the open border system. So they thought that it was unequal because India is such a huge country, and if a large number of Indians go there, invest there, and take back whatever on so this, in that context they have been doing that. And there are certain clauses which have become irrelevant today, like 2, 3, right? And this is where the Eminent Persons group was constituted by the 2 prime ministers of Nepal and India in 2016.
How much does the ethnic and sort of cultural linkages between India and Nepal determine or complicate Nepal-India relations?
To a large extent, I would say our relationship has been overwhelmingly driven by what Kathmandu thinks about India and what New Delhi thinks about Nepal, right? And that is where the problem comes, right? And I would feel that if we now Nepalis have a federalist structure, right? They have 7 provinces. I think this is going to drastically ease the situation. So that means our Bihar government or our Uttarakhand government or UP government would be interacting much closely with the Nepalese counterparts there. And actually it is state-to-state relationship, right?
Professor Lama, you seem to suggest that the Indian concern about Nepal is the relationship that Kathmandu has with New Delhi, and not necessarily about, say, what happens in the Terai region, what happens to the kinship ties between the people in Bihar and UP and with the Nepalese. If that were to be the case, what was the reason for India to sort of, quote-unquote, interfere in the Nepali constitution making process in 2015? That was one of the major problems between the two sides. So what explains that then?
You see, it is a fact, well-established fact, right, that in Nepalese polity, there is a dominance of a particular caste group.
That's right.
Right? And there is a huge, what you call it, people in the Madhises in the plains land. In the mid hills and the hills, you have huge ethnic groups like Tamils,
Kshetris,
Rais, Gurungs, all kinds of things, right? And they have been deprived. So that was the concern of not only India. Please remember, this is the concern. It's a global concern. Some of us have been studying this. Americans are as concerned as Indians as far as giving rights to the marginalized communities, including the Madhises and the ethnic groups there. So as long as that concern was highlighted by India, it was a kind of a global concern. So it was. But when it really came to making provisions for these various groups in the constitution, right? It was widely discussed that India intervened. India said that we would like to have this, but it is, of course, it could be a speculation. But the very fact remains that Nepal strongly felt about it, right? Huge press coverage about it, right? And there were comments that as if constitution is happening for the first time and the last time. There were provisions for what you call it amendments. This is where I feel we have to change the mode now. We have four layers of relationship between India and Nepal. First is government to government. Second is what you call it between the private sector. Third is the civil societies, and fourth is the people to people. And I'm telling you, 80% of our relationship are determined by what government to government think about it. Whereas I would feel the layers should be just the reverse. This is the upside down. The first should be what people think about it, then what civil society think about it. Private government should be just a facilitator, right? And this is what I see many of the Nepalese would like, that government should play only a facilitating role.
I do not disagree with the fact that there were legitimate feelings and concerns about the manner in which the Nepalese government went about with its constitution making. But is it our job to intervene and tell the Nepalese that you go to do things in a proper manner, in a manner that is befitting, in a manner that helps all the sections of the Nepali population? Even if that were to be our concern, there are things happening in Myanmar. We are not concerned about that. So I think it would be incorrect to say that because we were concerned about what was happening there, we intervened. And you are not even saying that India intervened. But even if that were to be the case, was it necessary for India to intervene in 2015 and send its foreign secretary to Nepal after the Constituent Assembly had passed the constitution and tell them to change it? Was that appropriate?
You see, this is where the sophistication diplomacy comes.
Right.
Let's be very clear about it. It is not that Nepal and India have not interacted on very critical, sensitive issues in the past. What came out very clearly this time was there was some kind of a demonstration of some kind of a blatant attitude, right? On talking about it, on making it happen, on institutionalize it. This was blatant, right, and widely discussed, right, and this really showed that somewhere we need to have some kind of sophistication in our diplomacy, right, a quietness, some kind. There are ways. So this is where we need to rethink about our diplomatic skills, instruments, and of course institutions which we address to.
How do you, on balance, how do you assess Mr. Modi's Nepal policy? It started off very well. He went to Nepal, and then things started falling apart. The constitution making process. Then we had the blockade. Then Nepal getting close to China. Then, of course, this year again, Sharma Oli did visit India. But on balance, do you think we went off the track and then came back onto track? How do you sort of assess the Modi government's Nepal policy?
You see, I always thought that when the new government came, and many of us thought in South Asia, all of South Asia, that there is going to be a drastic change as far as India's policy in the neighborhood is concerned. We thought that there will be a very well-visioned policy now. We thought that there will be transforming actions, and we thought that there will be a large number of newer institutions which would be playing critical role. And that is against the incremental approach we had in the neighborhood in the past 30, 40 years, right? But did not happen. Today also, I would say, we do not have a very clear-cut policy on any of the neighboring countries. I'm telling you, it's right. When I see
What explains that? I mean, that's a crucial point you're making, that India does not have a coherent, clear policy on its neighborhood. What explains that?
we have started doing away with institutional memories. Do you get it? We do not really bother about what happened 15 years back, 10 years back. You get my point. If somebody had told the present government, look, in 87, 88, or in 1971, when India's blockade took place, this had happened, right? This kind of actions would have never happened, right? Where you would alienate an entire generation, right? And the second thing, which is very surprising, is we are not really thinking big. Say, for example, on Himalayas, right? We have all the advantages. Himalayas, actually, we are supposed to be the core player in the entire Himalaya system, right? Everybody talks about this, that, but where is our policy on the Himalayas, right? Look at the other side of the border, right? They have institutions, they have people working on it, they have...
China.
Yes, they have...
Do you want to elaborate a little more on the Chinese policy towards the region?
Yes, they are a political... You see, for example, tell me, I'll give you just two examples. One is, where is that center in India that works on the policies related to Himalayas, right? It's so significant. There are the water towers, the Himalayas would determine our climates, right?
Your department in JNU is supposed to be doing that.
Now tell me, where is that, how many South Asian studies center are there in the country? Tell me, go to China, right? And go see when I was in China, I used to be amazed by the way they are conducting the Himalayan studies on meteorology, on biodiversity, on natural disasters, on ethnicity, on cultural linkages. Hey, what? And where is that? We have two institutions located in Dehradun, one institution located in Arunachal. Where is the coordination? Where are the harmonization? Where is that national institution that really guides our Himalayan policies, right? So similarly, so this is where I think we don't have a consolidated, coherent, and a kind of a consistent thinking on some of these issues, right? We just react. Right? And we don't have a policy where we don't have a preemptive policy also.
We do have a policy. This government, would I be wrong in saying that the BJP government has been keen on using Nepal to promote its cultural nationalist agenda? And I have in mind the visit of Mr. Modi, the Prime Minister, to Nepal in 2014, visiting Pashupatinath, saffron-clad, sandal-paste, Rudraksh garland. It was almost as if a big Mahant was visiting Nepal and not the Prime Minister of India. So, yes, there is a certain policy, which is the Sangh Parivar's policy of using Nepal for its as a sort of cultural Hindu religious plank. Would you disagree with that?
Well, I would not disagree with that, but that is a very small segment of our national interest.
Absolutely. It is not even our national interest.
Yes, that's a very, if our national interest is to really consolidate cultural relationship, that becomes, that plays a small role in that, right? Whereas I would not see anything bigger than that. But my question is, see, if you go to any South Asian countries, of course, except Pakistan, or to a large extent even Pakistan, if you ask civil society there, which is your first choice, which country is your first choice, everybody would say India, right? Go to Bhutan, go to Nepal, go to Myanmar today, right? They will say first choice India. Why don't we take advantage of this special first choice status, right? For example, our Act East policy, right? Tell me, we are all concerned about Chinese Belt and Road initiatives. They are doing CPEC projects, they are doing this project, they are doing MUSE, this really border economic cooperation, huge projects. My question is, despite Prime Minister personally making intervention in Act East policy, how much of progress we have made in connectivity, right? The trilateral highway between India, Myanmar and Thailand. Where is it today, right? And this is a reflection. This reflects many of our projects in other countries, in Nepal, in Bhutan, in Bangladesh.
Our inability to keep promises.
Yes. Why? Why don't you declare some of these projects as projects of national interest and hold one ministry or one corporation or whatever it is totally responsible for this?
How concerned are you about the Chinese quote-unquote invasion of South Asia from an economic point of view, from an infrastructure point of view? Is it not true that India will also benefit at the end of the day if Chinese continue to build infrastructure in the region, if in Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Myanmar, if they construct these infrastructures, right, it's going to be good for India too in order to trade with these countries. So should we be looking at it from a very should we be looking at it negatively at all?
No, see the bottom line is, can you stop China?
But you can't.
Right? Bottom line is that. So either you have to react, keep quiet, or proact. Right? Either you have to compete or cooperate.
Complaining will not help.
It would not. In the CPEC project, right, you can't have one side of narratives. Like CPEC is bad, it will create debt, Pakistan will be a debt-ridden country. Why not we have 10 different narratives? I would feel that in case of CPEC project, if we have a narrative which is conditional, right? We would like to join CPEC projects because we would like to get access to Xinjiang, and we will also like to get to Central Asia, and we would also like to get access to Gwadar Port.
In any case, while China has its advantages, India also has its advantages. Notwithstanding the political and social goodwill that we enjoy in our neighborhood. I was looking at some of the data, and it says that China contributed to around 87% of the FDI commitments received by Nepal in 2017. And at the same time, the nearest Chinese seaport is situated more than 3,000 kilometers away from the Nepalese border, Tianjin. So you're looking at a natural advantage that India enjoys. So one doesn't need to be all that negative about what China is doing. We should all that we need to do at the end of the day is to fulfill our commitments and make sure that we negotiate terms and conditions of deals with these countries. Would you not agree?
Yes, absolutely. You see, because if you look at the CPEC project, right, out of the 51 projects, they will have about 24 projects related to energy. And Pakistan would have a installed capacity enhanced by almost 2,000 megawatt, right? Now my question is, we have started opening up. It's not that India has not reacted to it. India has done significant transforming projects also. Say for example, one of the best thing which has happened in South Asia is, for the first time, we have a national grid to national grid interconnections between India and Bangladesh after the land border agreement, right? Now, the second best thing has happened is, for the first time, Government of India, the Ministry of Powers and the CERC, Electricity Regulatory Commission, have given a draft saying that how do we trade on energy among the neighboring countries, right? That means what? This is for the first time, though it says bilateral, though it puts a lot of conditions to investment partners in Nepal, Bhutan and Bangladesh, This has opened the possibility that India would be the core transit point for electricity among the neighboring countries, right? If there is electricity generated in Nepal, now Bangladesh can use Indian national grid and get these connections, right? And today this has led to agreements between MOU between Nepal and Bangladesh, Bangladesh and Bhutan. What could be better than this, right? My question is, why not you make this draft much more comprehensive and talk about the what you call the western borders, right? If you are bringing, you have a project, Central Asia, South Asia project, electricity, right? You have a TAPI project there. So why not you bring, you use TAPI, you use CASA project, and India will be a transit point. It will be receiving gas also, but India would be a transit point. Then this gas will go to China, to Bangladesh, to Bhutan, to Nepal, to Myanmar through India, using India as a transit point. This is our core geographical advantage.
Well, that requires vision, that requires long-term thinking. Chinese presence in the region, especially in Sri Lanka and Maldives, has faced some roadblocks in the recent past. What do you make of that? Is that a sign of the things to come in the years?
You see that a very clear thing about India and China in South Asia is we have started becoming too regime centric. Do you get it?
What does that mean?
That is, India identifies it with Khaleda or Sheikh Hasina. If there is, tomorrow if there is Khaleda, right, and everything. So Chinese did the same thing, right? In Sri Lanka, it identifies itself with a particular regime. The next regime can, everything. So this is something new in our diplomacy, right? Why should you identify yourselves with a particular regime, one, and particular personality-based regime, right? And it had never happened. If you see what Prime Minister Nehru did, if you see what after that, even if you see even what Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee did, it never happened. Tomorrow, if there is change in Bangladesh, if Khaleda Zia comes, right, BNP comes into power, what would happen? What would happen to Palatana gas project? What would happen to waterways? What would happen to transit? Have you ever thought about it?
And this is happening in Bangladesh, Nepal, Maldives, Sri Lanka. Where is that coming from? When did this change start occurring?
Of course, I have seen this happening for the last 10 to 15 years.
So it's not something that's happening in the last 4 years?
No, but it has become too much now.
So this policy needs to be changed?
It has to be. It has to be. Otherwise, everything will go topsy-turvy.
I think that's a very fascinating point, that India as a country should not suck up to regimes in our neighborhood, but should actually deal and do business with the state.
The other important thing is, what we have failed in our neighborhood is we don't believe in building institutions. You build roads, you build hospitals, right? But you really do not build institutional softwares.
What do you mean institution building in the neighborhood?
Say, for example, Nepal requires a huge institutions in terms of technological interventions, right? Climate change, constitution, law, financial management of federal. Where are those? Poor, you have institutions which were built 50 years, you are still, right? And we are well equipped to do that.
But you should build institutions, but do it subtly.
You could train them people, right?
I mean, without rhetoric.
Yes.
So it doesn't backfire at the end of the day.
And it is not individuals. Then the institutions will be our constituencies.
That's a very sobering, interesting thought. Professor Lama, here's my last question. India has been cold shouldering SAARC for a very long time. How is this going to affect India's relationship with its neighborhood if it continues to cold shoulder SAARC?
I would give you a very forthright answer.
Please do.
Right? India is not a regional player. Tell me one institution, one regional institutions where India has made a huge difference. Tell me. BIMSTEC, IOARC, BBIN, SAARC. right? Whereas all these four institutions four regional organizations would give a pivotal role to India. We have not been able to do that, right? We think that by blocking China, right, we will be able to be more critical in these institutions. No. Today, the choice for South Asians are whether you would like to have a de facto presence of China or a de jure presence of China. That's a choice today, right? So we have not made any difference, right? Look at the institutions. SAARC is closing institutions one by one. We had a documentation center in India, we closed it down, right? We declared with great fanfare that the South Asia University will be located in India, right? It's 10 years now. It's still located in a hotel building, right? And it's such a prestigious institution. Don't blame anyone. Say, for example, on terrorism. SAARC Convention on Terrorism of 1987 is the most comprehensive conventions. It talks about anything, right? Deportations to identifying to closing downs of the financial networking, all kinds of things. But tell me, has India ever referred to the convention where we were a signatory, where all the head of the states or the governments were the signatory? We have forgotten, right? Therefore, if India has to play a critical role at the regional level, it has to really sincerely and consistently rebuild regional institutions.
Professor Lama, wonderful talking to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
To receive instant updates on all videos from The Wire, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Pay to support independent journalism. Click the link in the description and choose the amount you want to pay.